Hi everyone. So today, Suzanne and I will be discussing racism and in relation to what's currently happening across the globe.
Okay, yeah. So, what is racism then?
Right. So racism is defined as having a bias against people based off of their skin color. So what that means is like you just choose not to like somebody based off of the color of their skin rather than, for example, them being mean, them being unkind, the things that people could actually change.
Okay, good. Okay, what is to discriminate?
Right. Discrimination is when you use when you use we're influenced kind of against people. Also, you can discriminate in how you think somebody's going to behave. Like when you assume, for example, certain groups of people are lazy, that's called discrimination because that's not proven and it's not a genetic trait, it's just a way of being. So discrimination is when you assume things about people based off
Okay,
of their ethnicity.
yeah. Okay. So used perhaps on a stereotype then, perhaps.
Right, and so that leads into stereotypes. A
Okay, so
stereotype.
what is a stereotype?
So the stereotype is like the assumption that people will do things based on their race, or maybe it's uh maybe a cultural thing that people do that is assumed. So for example, a stereotype of Spanish people: you all eat paella and you listen to flamenco. Do some of you eat paella? Yes. Do some of you listen to flamenco? Of course. But is it a national thing? No. You have different ethnicities, you have different cultures, you
Different
have different
accents.
region, different accents, different languages. So it
Yeah.
doesn't really apply. So a stereotype is based off of one aspect of your culture, maybe, and then it isn't used to assume that everybody is the same way.
Yeah.
Just the same idea that, like, when you hear the word European, you just assume everybody is, one kind of way.
Yeah. Okay. So then, in that respect, uh, what is biased?
So a bias is something that you internally have. So in English we call it a preconceived notion. A preconceived notion is something that you have internally and that you assume about people based off of their background or whatever you know about the culture. So for example, maybe uh, like an example I've heard before is like, oh, I don't like X group because I think they do X. That's a kind of like more like a bias, like, or I don't have any problems with this group, but they tend to do this. That's being
So, what
biased.
is prejudice, and have you experienced prejudice?
Yes. So when you're prejudiced against people, it also is kind of like, think of these words that we just discussed: bias, stereotype. When you have a prejudice against somebody, again, it's these ideas you have based off of your experience or what you see on TV, like something external. And so when you have a prejudice against a group of people, you tend to maybe think things that aren't true. And so, for example, an example of prejudice could be like assuming, like, because of the color of my skin, I would be more likely to steal, right? That's like, use your prejudice against me.
Okay. Okay. Good. Okay. Um, so, what do you think is privileged?
Right. Okay. So privilege is a very like tricky word because a lot of people, when they hear the word, they assume it means it's related to money, and it's not in the sense that we're speaking about. We all have privileges. I have privileges. Having an American passport is a privilege. I don't have to think about my paperwork when I travel. I just go where I want to go. So that is my privilege. But when we speak about privilege and race, it's related to the fact that you don't get stereotyped and things based off of the color of your skin. So you don't have disadvantages specifically for your skin color. And that's what we mean when we speak about privilege in a racial sense.
Okay. Can you explain a time when you were privileged, when privilege was being used?
Right. So, for example, like, I'm trying to think. So, like, I remember I was with some friends and we went to go somewhere, and it was kind of like, oh, there's not enough space for all of you. But then suddenly my other friend, who is not black, showed up, and all of a sudden it was like, oh, well, we guess we can find an extra chair for them and we can make it work. So it's kind of like you've just like made way for somebody else because now it's not just me. There's like somebody else. So now you have space because there's not me, it's me and another white person, so you feel comfortable with that.
Okay, is that considered then racism privilege? Race?
No, it's more like because for example, it's like this person isn't letting me into their establishment, but because I'm with another white person, all of a sudden it's
Ah,
okay.
the opposite.
Yeah.
Okay,
Right.
right.
So it's like they're like, or I mean I have like maybe I'll think of another example, but yeah, like a good example of some privilege that I've seen. Or even my own experiences, like when I was getting my visas, I never really had to explain myself, but I know if you're from a poorer country, they interview you. They give you a hard time. They make it
Oof.
difficult. It's not like a 1, 2, 3 process. Like I
Okay,
know having my passport, fast tracks that.
okay,
So we can use that as an example also, because I've
okay,
seen the other side of it.
okay. Can you give me 2 or 3 examples of racism with black people or with white people or
Or
whatever you prefer?
right. So I mean, unfortunately, there is still a lot of racism, and that's why we're doing this video to maybe
Yeah,
clarify some things for you guys.
yeah.
So I personally I mean, the examples that I've seen of racism. Let's for example, let's go back to this passports thing. When
Okay,
you come from a certain country, right? Let's say an African nation, when you come to Europe with that passport, you get not even close to the amount of privileges as the rest of us. You have to prove all your paperwork, you have to be super educated, and even when you have all of these things, people still deny you for work, assume that you're a labor worker. You're not treated in the same respect as the rest of us who come from these first world countries.
right.
So, I mean, like, I've seen people come highly educated, I mean, maybe even more degrees than me, and it's like struggling to find work because of their passport.
Okay,
Why? Because of the country that they come from, it's assumed to be, not good because it's like Africa is one country and they're all poor kind of thing.
okay. So, okay, now think about the racial inequities to do with the health that has been in the recent news this week.
Right. Yeah. So a very clear example of that, I'll give an American example because that's the one that I know. So, for example, I've said to some of you guys before, healthcare is not a free thing. It's not a thing that you receive for paying taxes in America. You have to pay on top of your insurance. So going to the doctor is very expensive. If you are poor or live in a poor area, healthcare is not for you. That's like something that you have to really think about. So if you're sick, you really have to think whether you have the money to go to the doctor. Whereas, or the other side of it is during slavery, people chose Black people because they said that we're very strong and we're tough, like animals. And that stereotype has been carried over today into medicine. when you tell sometimes when you tell doctors things, they assume is like, no, she's strong, so like she can take it. So it's like you have like, we're considered to have higher pain tolerance, and doctors typically don't listen to us. So that's a real problem. As a matter of fact, there's a study that just was finished recently that said that mothers of color who give birth are 200% more likely to die because of these factors. So is it's about wealth, and it's about long ingrained stereotypes. So these are some examples of medical inequalities in America.
My gosh, I mean, that's terrible because
Yeah,
health is a basic thing for
it
every human
is
being. It's a
so
human
bad.
right to have good health, huh?
Yeah, and I
And
mean, and it's bad. And I think the problem is for me, I'm so we're specifically talking about Black people, but all poor people suffer. I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Aaron Brockovich, where,
yes,
right,
yes,
that's a clear example of people
God,
being too
yeah,
poor to afford medicine. I had cancer. So that's just, one part of a
terrible.
multi-part system. So it's, yeah, like there are so many examples. Like, it's crazy. I mean, thank God, like my parents have good jobs. Like I was on their insurance. Going to the doctor was never like a debate. But for a lot of people, it's like we eat or we'll go get medicine. Like
Yeah,
there's
gosh, should
no
never come to that. Never.
right. So it's horrible. Yeah, because it's like, I mean,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay. Well, thank you for the interview,
yeah,
and let's hope this makes a good impression on people and changes
yeah.
people's minds.
Thinking, yeah,
Okay. Thank you
yeah.
very much.
All right, bye.
Bye.